Wales is 8,000 square miles. In that space, there's a village that was deliberately drowned, a railway that climbs a mountain it has no business climbing, a house smaller than most bathrooms, and a castle that's been standing for 800 years and counting. We're going to visit all of them. And everywhere else worth stopping. Snowdon Mountain Railway is the only rack and pinion railway in the UK, climbing 3,560 feet in just 4.7 miles with gradients up to 1 in 5.5. Speaking of mountains, Cader Idris has a legend that anyone who spends a night on its summit will wake up either a poet, a madman, or dead. And Pembrokeshire fan in the Brecon Beacons is used by the SAS for training, because its grueling terrain can break even elite soldiers. But Wales' most impressive feats are its castles. Conwy Castle's walls contain 21 towers and were built in just 4 years using 1,500 workers, making it one of the fastest castle constructions in medieval Europe. Caernarfon Castle was deliberately built to look like Constantinople's walls, because Edward I wanted to intimidate the Welsh with imperial Roman symbolism. And Harlech Castle was built so close to the sea that ships could dock at its base, but now sits over a mile inland due to land rising after the Ice Age. The landscape itself tells equally wild stories. Blaenau Festiniog is built on so much slate that it's one of the few places in Wales where nothing grows naturally. The entire landscape is man-made. Aber Falls drops 120 feet in a single plunge, but the stream above it is so small you can step across it. Now let's explore the most incredible places this ancient land has to offer. Did you know that the roofs of the Houses of Parliament were born inside a Welsh mountain? Snowdonia's Dinorwig quarry once carved more slate than anywhere else on Earth, feeding the Industrial Revolution one slab at a time. And the scars it left behind. They've become part of something extraordinary. Picture this. You're standing at the edge of a valley 500 million years old, mist curling through terraced cliffs that glow purple and gray in the early light. The air hits you first. Damp moss, wet heather, earth so rich you can almost taste it. 823 square miles of ancient rock stretch in every direction, holding Wales's tallest peak and its largest natural lake within the same wild borders. This is Snowdonia. Not a postcard. A landscape that worked, that endured, and that still feels untamed when the clouds roll low across the ridgelines. The trail drops toward the cliff edge and the Atlantic opens up beneath you. Turquoise water slamming against rock faces that are among the oldest in Wales. This is the Pembrokeshire Coast, and here's something that might surprise you. Out of every national park in the United Kingdom, this is the only one defined entirely by its coastline. 240 square miles of sea cliffs, collapsed caves, and geological formations that glaciers spent millennia carving. At Stack Rocks, pillars of limestone jut from the surf like ruins of some drowned cathedral. Around the headland, the Green Bridge of Wales arches over churning water, a natural doorway the sea is slowly reclaiming. Then there's Barafundle Bay, where the sand feels almost Caribbean until the Welsh wind reminds you otherwise. Come at golden hour. The light turns those ancient cliffs amber, and the ocean holds every shade of blue you've forgotten existed. Did you know there's a castle in Wales built directly on top of a Roman fortress from 50 AD? Cardiff Castle sprawls across 200 acres in the heart of the city, and here's where it gets wild. In the 1800s, the third Marquess of Bute, one of the wealthiest men on the planet, thanks to coal money, decided to transform this ancient military stronghold into a Gothic fantasy palace. You step inside expecting cold stone and arrow slits. Instead, you find the Arab room. Walls covered in gold leaf and intricate murals depicting scenes from the Middle East, colors so vivid they feel impossible for Victorian Britain. The ornate clock tower rises 30 meters, every surface carved with obsessive detail. Outside, emerald lawns wrap around gray stone walls that have watched nearly 2,000 years of history unfold. Visit at golden hour. The limestone catches the light and glows like something from another century entirely. Water thunders off a cliff face 120 feet above you, crashing into a rocky pool with a roar you can feel in your chest. This is Aber Falls, one of the tallest waterfalls in North Wales, and a place with a past far wilder than you'd expect. Back in the 13th century, this valley served as a battleground where Llewellyn the Great fought to defend Welsh territory against English forces. A weathered stone nearby, known as Synon's Stone, supposedly marks where a local hero fell in combat. But standing here now, all of that fades. Mist drifts up from the basin and catches the light, turning the air silver. Bright green moss clings to every surface, almost impossibly vivid against dark, wet rock. Come at sunrise if you can. The first light spills over the ridgeline and sets the falling water on fire, just for a few perfect minutes. Did you know there's an entire village sitting at the bottom of this lake? In 1888, engineers dammed a Welsh valley to quench Liverpool's thirst for water, and drowned the village of Llandudno in the process. Houses, streets, a church, all swallowed. During severe droughts, the old stone tower emerges from the receding waterline like a ghost refusing to stay buried. That alone would make Lake Vyrnwy worth the drive. But stand here on a still morning and the place earns its reputation on beauty alone. Mist curls off 1,200 acres of deep blue water, hemmed in by hills so green they almost glow. The massive stone dam stretches 450 meters across the valley, its arched face more cathedral than infrastructure. Autumn turns the surrounding forests copper and gold, their reflections pooling on the surface. Underneath it all, a village sleeps, waiting for the water to remember. Edward I didn't just build a castle here. He built a message. Every stone was deliberately modeled after the walls of Constantinople, the greatest fortress the medieval world had ever known. This wasn't defense. This was intimidation, carved in limestone and aimed squarely at the Welsh. You stand before those polygonal towers and walls nearly 3 meters thick, and you feel it. The sheer weight of imperial ambition pressing down across 700 years. Run your hand along the rough, weather-beaten stone. Wind and rain have softened its edges, but nothing has softened its presence. Construction began in 1283 and took almost 50 years to complete, sprawling across 2 acres of ground where the River Seant meets the Menai Strait. At golden hour, the whole fortress glows amber against the water, its reflection rippling below. Power fades. Empires crumble. But Caernarfon just stands there, daring you to look away. Legend says if you spend the night on this mountain, you'll wake up either a madman or a poet. No in between. Cader Idris rises nearly 3,000 feet above southern Wales, and for centuries people have genuinely believed the summit holds that kind of power. The mountain takes its name from Idris, a giant from Welsh mythology who supposedly used the peak as his personal chair, gazing out over the world below. You climb through moss so green it almost glows, clinging to slate that's been here since the last ice age carved these ridges 12,000 years ago. Then you reach Lyn Cowr, a glacial lake cradled in a near-perfect amphitheater of cliff faces, its dark water impossibly still. At sunrise, light spills across the surrounding peaks in layers of gold and shadow. Did you know that in 1956, the entire United Kingdom had to choose just one landscape worthy of its first ever Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty designation? They chose here. The Gower Peninsula. 39 miles of coastline carved over 200 million years, and every single mile earned that title. You walk the clifftop path above Rhossili Bay, and salt air tangles with wildflowers while sand stretches below in a vast golden arc. At Three Cliffs Bay, limestone juts from the earth like broken teeth, sculpted by time into something almost deliberate. Then there's Worm's Head, a tidal island you can only reach at low tide, daring you to time it right. As the sun drops, light pours across these ancient cliffs like liquid amber, and you understand why nothing else came close. A giant redwood towers 50 meters above the Welsh countryside. Wait, a redwood? In Wales? Bodnant Garden holds the largest collection of champion trees anywhere in the United Kingdom, and this particular giant has been growing here for over 150 years. The secret is a microclimate, so sheltered that exotic species from across the globe thrive alongside native Welsh flora across 80 acres of terraced hillside. You walk beneath canopies that have no business existing at this latitude. Then late spring arrives, and the famous laburnum arch erupts, golden chains of flowers dripping overhead, filling the air with a sweet, honey-thick scent. Come early morning, when soft light filters through ancient branches and mist clings to the valley floor. The whole place feels borrowed from a dream. A single narrow track climbs 3,560 feet straight up the flanks of Wales's highest peak. The only public mountain railway in the country, and the highest in all of Britain. Built in 1896 using rack and pinion engineering that was revolutionary for its era, this Victorian marvel still hauls passengers to the summit the same way it did over a century ago. You hear it before you see it. That rhythmic puffing of the steam engine, coal smoke curling into mountain air, wheels gripping steel teeth cut into the rail. The train clings to the slope as valleys unfold beneath you. Lakes glinting silver, ridgelines stacking into blue distance. During the Second World War, these same carriages carried troops and supplies, turning a tourist railway into a lifeline. Have you ever watched a film completely submerged beneath a Victorian pumping station? In Cardiff, you can. Deep inside a repurposed engine house built in 1891, the world's only purpose-built underwater cinema flickers to life. A perfect symbol of a city that refuses to let its industrial past gather dust. You walk along the bay at golden hour, salt air mingling with sizzling street food, and the copper-clad Wales Millennium Centre blazes like a giant bronze shield against the sky. This was the first city on Earth to earn UNESCO's City of Literature title, back in 2004. Rugby anthems still echo from the Principality Stadium on match days, rattling cafe windows across the centre. Cardiff doesn't whisper its story. It performs it. Edward I didn't just build a castle here. He built an entire walled town in 4 years, fortress, defenses, and all, to crush Welsh resistance so thoroughly that the landscape itself would never forget. And 700 years later, it hasn't. You arrive at Conwy and those 8 massive towers still dominate everything around them. Walls stretching over 1,300 meters, some nearly 8 meters thick, wrap around the town like a stone fist. Run your hand along the battlements, and you feel centuries of wind and rain carved into rough, gray limestone. At sunset, golden light catches the towers against the mountains behind, and the whole estuary glows. Conwy earned its place as a UNESCO World Heritage Site not for charm, but for sheer, unapologetic power that still commands the horizon. Did you know there's a gorge in North Wales that scientists have officially classified as a site of special scientific interest? Not for its legends, but for rare plants that grow nowhere else nearby, thriving in a microclimate all their own. Welcome to the Fairy Glen. 12,000 years ago, glaciers carved this narrow passage, just 300 meters long, 20 meters deep. And the result feels like stumbling into another world entirely. You follow the river as it winds between moss-drenched cliffs, every surface electric green, every rock sculpted into shapes that genuinely look deliberate. Locals have long insisted this place is a portal to the fairy realm. Sounds like folklore? Walk through on an early morning when mist lifts off the water and sunlight fractures through the canopy. You'll understand why they believed it. The River Wye carves through the only natural limestone gorge in the entire UK. Cliffs of rock 400 million years old rising 100 meters straight up from emerald water. Think about that. Older than dinosaurs, older than trees, and you can paddle right through it in a canoe. At 136 miles, this is the longest river in Wales, winding from mountain springs down through valleys so green they almost look unreal. Romans used this corridor as a trade route. Medieval merchants floated goods downstream to Monmouth. But forget the history books for a moment. Climb to Simon's Yacht Rock at dawn, when mist clings to the water below and peregrine falcons wheel through the gorge. The silence up there swallows everything but the river's slow pulse. Have you ever stood inside a castle that was designed to be resupplied by sea? Only the sea abandoned it? Harlech Castle rises from a cliff that once towered 100 feet above crashing waves. Today, the coastline sits a full mile away, stranded by centuries of land reclamation. Edward I built this fortress in 12 years starting in 1283, and he meant it to be unbreakable. Walls 6 meters thick. A fortified stairway cut straight down to the water that no longer comes. You run your hand along stone so weathered by wind, it feels almost soft, almost alive. This place endured a 7-year siege during the Wars of the Roses, the longest in British history. At sunset, its towers glow amber against the mountains, defiant and impossibly alone. Before Queen Victoria even took the throne, someone in this small Welsh seaside town installed the first camera obscura in Britain. 1829. A device projecting live images of the coastline onto a white dish in a darkened room, decades before photography went mainstream. That's Aberystwyth for you. A place that looks like a classic Victorian resort, but has always been quietly ahead of its time. You walk along Wales's oldest pier as salt air mingles with the sweet drift of ice cream from the promenade vendors. Behind the colorful beach huts, the Cambrian mountains rise dark and green. The town also became home to the National Library of Wales, guarding centuries of Welsh manuscripts. At sunset, amber light floods the bay, and the pier glows against water that seems to stretch forever. Did you know there's a Welsh seaside town still wrapped in its 700-year-old armor? Tenby's 13th century walls rise from the cliffs like they never got the memo that the Middle Ages ended, and inside them, life couldn't feel more alive. You walk through a stone archway and suddenly you're surrounded by rows of pastel houses in sherbet pinks, yellows, and blues, stacked above a harbor where fishing boats knock gently against the quay. Salt air mixes with the sweet drift of ice cream from parlors along the promenade. This was once a major trading port with the Americas, and that 18th century wealth built some of the finest Victorian architecture in Britain. At golden hour, warm light spills across those candy-colored facades, and the ancient walls glow like they're remembering every century at once. A Victorian seaside town so perfectly preserved, you half expect a horse-drawn carriage to roll past. Llandudno clings to the North Wales coast like a postcard that refused to fade. And stretching from its shore, the longest pier in Wales. 2,295 feet of iron and timber, built in 1877 and still drawing crowds nearly 150 years later. You walk its weathered planks as salt air hits your face, mingling with the warm drift of fish and chips from the promenade stalls below. The Great Orme headland rises behind you, framing the whole scene. Here's the thing. This town also hosted Britain's first electric tramway back in 1902. At sunset, golden light washes across the curved seafront, and the whole Victorian promenade glows like time simply paused. Did you know that for centuries, people have claimed this hill is the final resting place of King Arthur? No archaeological evidence supports it, but standing here, you almost understand why. Glastonbury Tor rises 518 feet above the Somerset levels, a lone sentinel shaped by ice ages 12,000 years ago. You climb the terrace slopes through wildflowers and wind-bent grass, calves burning, until St. Michael's Tower emerges against the sky, a 15th century ruin perched on the summit like a stone crown. The views stretch endlessly. Flat green farmland in every direction, threaded with silver waterways. This place has drawn Druids, early Christians, and Arthurian dreamers alike, each layering their own meaning onto the same ancient earth. At sunset, the Tor's shadow stretches impossibly long across the levels below. The salt air hits you before the city does. Swansea smells like the sea and something else, cockles sizzling on a griddle, laver bread frying in oatmeal, fresh Welsh cakes dusted with sugar. Follow that scent and it leads you here. Wales's largest indoor market, over 100 stalls crammed under one roof, trading without interruption since 1897. Think about that. 2 world wars, a devastating blitz that flattened much of the city center, and still this market opened its doors. You wander past towers of Barabrith, buckets of cockles harvested that morning, vendors who greet regulars by name. This is also the city that gave the world Dylan Thomas. And honestly, you can feel that wild, lyrical energy in every corner. Swansea Bay glows amber as the sun drops, the tide pulling light across the sand like spilled ink. Did you know that Porthcawl Lighthouse was never supposed to last? Built in 1860 as a temporary fix to guide ships through the Bristol Channel, waters so treacherous they swallowed vessels whole. It was meant to serve for a short period and come down. But the town refused to let it go. So temporary became permanent, and over 160 years later, it still clings to the breakwater's edge, 30 feet of weathered white paint, and that defiant red lantern on top. You walk out along the stone pier, salt spray catching your face, waves crashing against rock on both sides. The whole Bristol Channel stretches before you, gray and restless. Come at sunset, though, and everything changes. Warm amber light wraps around that little tower, turning something built to be forgotten into something no one ever will. The roof vanished nearly 500 years ago, and somehow that made it more powerful. Tintern Abbey rises from the Wye Valley floor like a skeleton refusing to lie down. 60 feet of naked Gothic arches open to the Welsh sky, rain and sunlight pouring through windows that once held glass. Founded in 1131, this was one of the first Gothic structures ever raised in Wales, a prototype for the soaring cathedrals that would later reshape Europe. You walk in and the smell hits immediately. Damp stone, deep moss, centuries of slow decay. When Henry VIII dissolved the monastery in 1536, locals carted off the roof stones for farmhouses. What remained drew Wordsworth, Turner, and generations of romantics. Come at dawn when mist threads through those empty arches, and you'll understand why. Did you know that Cardiff wasn't always the capital of Wales? In 1404, a rebel prince named Owain Glyndwr stood right here in Machynlleth and declared it the seat of a free Welsh nation. Over 800 years old, this small town in the Dyfi Valley once held the weight of an entire country's independence. You walk its narrow streets today, and the earthy scent of rain-soaked woodland clings to everything. A handsome clock tower anchors the square where Wales's oldest weekly market still trades. But here's what catches you off guard. Machynlleth has reinvented itself as a hub for sustainability and alternative culture, even hosting a comedy festival that pulls serious talent. Arrive early, when soft morning light spills across those green valley walls, and the quiet feels earned. Picture this: 1067. The Battle of Hastings ended barely a year ago, and William the Conqueror's men are already here, hauling stone up a limestone cliff above the River Wye. What they built still stands. Chepstow is the oldest surviving stone fortification in Britain, and when you press your hand against those walls, you're touching masonry laid down before the Domesday Book was even written. The keep rises 25 meters above you, its pale gray stone worn smooth by nearly 1,000 years of Welsh rain. Each century left its mark. Norman arches giving way to later medieval towers, the whole fortress evolving like a living thing. Did you know that according to Welsh legend, no bird will fly over the dark waters of Llyn Idwal? The lake is said to be haunted by a drowned prince. Idwal Fol, an ancient king of Gwynedd, supposedly murdered and cast into these glacial depths 12,000 years ago. Whether the birds actually avoid it, well, you'll have to watch the sky yourself. What you will see is water so impossibly turquoise it looks displaced from the Caribbean, cradled by walls of black slate that glaciers carved when ice still ruled Britain. This became the UK's first national nature reserve back in 1954, partly because rare Arctic alpine plants still cling to these cliffs, survivors from the Ice Age refusing to let go. Come at dawn. Watch shadows creep across that ancient amphitheater of rock and silence. 3,000 feet up, two slabs of rock stand side by side on Tryfan's summit. Adam and Eve, the locals call them. And for centuries, climbers have leapt the gap between them. A tradition said to bring good luck, though one wrong step means something else entirely. The mountain itself juts from the Ogwen Valley like a broken tooth, its jagged pyramid silhouette unmistakable against the Welsh sky. Below, emerald grass gives way to ancient grey stone carved by glaciers 12,000 years ago. Mist drifts low across Llyn Ogwen at dawn, and the valley holds its breath. The smell hits you first. Warm bread, earthy root vegetables, something herbal you can't quite place. All drifting through Haverfordwest Saturday Market like an invitation you can't refuse. This 12th century Norman stronghold, once Pembrokeshire's beating commercial heart, still knows how to trade. But here's what caught me off guard. There's a restaurant here where every single ingredient comes from within 10 miles. Everything. The castle looms above the western Cleddau, its massive walls glowing amber at golden hour, while below, the town proves that 900 years of feeding people teaches you a thing or two. Wales has shown us that a small country can hold endless stories, from ancient castles whispering of kings to valleys where time moves differently. If you want more journeys like this, subscribe. Which Welsh valley or castle called to you most? Share your thoughts below.